Hello, welcome once again to the J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me on this artistic journey. And today we'll be working with colored pencils. So you'll need your number 2 or HB pencil, kneaded eraser, and some good quality colored pencils. Thanks for being willing to draw with me today, though. We're going to start out simple shapes and just say, hey, I want my bird to be right at the top of the page. So you can make a little mark up there and say, that's where his head's going to go. I want his head to be there. And how big is that head? Probably about a quarter of the size of my page. So I can just throw in this kind of oval shape. There's his head. His body's going to come down here. Maybe about cutting off the edge there is that limb. His little toes down in there. There's a wing that kind of comes off of this side. So just be thinking simple shapes. Everything's simple. Both wings are almost level, not quite. One wing's a little higher than the other. So if you kind of put your pencil like this and then tip it a little bit, say, okay, that's where that other wing goes, right there. That's the other wing. His little beak comes right off of that circle and just kind of curves down. There's his beak. Somewhere in there, we can adjust this. Right about smack dab in the middle of that oval that we made is his eye, kind of towards the top, not really on the top, but kind of towards the top. Kind of center, if that's your center, then it's just off center in there. So it's somewhere up in that area. We can throw that in there. Now, just like ink, everything we're going to draw here gets erased. One thing you've got to know, and this is something maybe you've experienced, whether it was earlier on in this class or in junior high, is that you'll do a drawing and then you'll color it, and all your colors turn muddy. And when you're done, the drawing is icky. That's because the colors have mixed with the graphite. Graphite always wins. It makes it muddy. And so when you're doing color of any kind like this, you want to get rid of your graphite. I'm just going to throw in some simple shapes to help guide me through, like where the wings go and the color is and things like that. Just some little guidelines here. His beak is almost level with the bottom of his eye. It actually comes up just a little bit. So if I take my pencil and go, okay, if that's the bottom of his eye, then that beak has got to go. Maybe his eye is too high. Maybe I'll lower it just a little bit. That beak is just about level with it. That's what we call proportioning. And these are just guidelines. Remember, we're going to erase all this. And again, we're thinking ink. So in the back of your mind, think this is ink, even though we're not going to use ink. But our drawing style and the way we think about it is like drawing with ink. This is why ink is so important and why we do so many ink drawings. I think I promised you that once you've drawn with ink, you'll never draw the same. It gets better because there's so much that you start noticing. So for me, that's probably about enough to. The rest of it I can get with my colored pencils. Oftentimes, people start saying, "Well, you know, graphite is kind of dark, so if I use black to start with, and that's kind of like drawing with pencil." I would avoid that. Black is one of the last things that we'll use. We'll use that to get our shadows and areas to go darker, but for the most part, most of the color we're going to use is anything dark would be like purples or blues. Indigo blue is a good one, or dark purple. And so that's what I want to start with. I'm going to kind of look through my colors here and pull out a violet or a purple or a blue, any of your darkest ones. I'm going to start out with violet. That's going to be my sketching color of choice. I'm going to start out with the eye, just because the eye is important. And like ink, you don't have to do a complete circle. So here's the eye. I'm just going to start out with a little shape around the eye. It's not completely round. The top part is a little cut off, but the bottom part is fairly round. So I come through and round that out there like that. There's a little highlight in there by the pupil, right up on the very top. That's why I broke that edge, because there's a little highlight there. So I'll just keep that up in there. Maybe do a little U shape for the pupil part, because it's cut off just a little bit by that highlight. So your eye makes that connection that this is a highlight there. It almost adds value around your mind does. And from here, I'm just going to go, all right, there's a little dark edge where that green is. I can throw that in. Some of these little lines that go around it, there's these little stripes that kind of come into it. I could throw those in. Little zigzag lines. You can use dots and dashes just like we do with ink, because we're going to eventually blend other colors in there. So just little shapes of dark and light. Little zigzags. Whatever it takes. If you want to do some light shading with this pencil, you're more than welcome to. Just remember though, we've got to get rid of that graphite. So what's going to happen is when we're done with this purple pencil, we're going to go over this with our kneaded eraser, pull out all that graphite so that our colors are going to be vibrant and beautiful. Otherwise, those colors mix with the graphite and turn muddy. These are those little dark stripes. You probably eye reads them as black. They're very dark. Black by itself is not the greatest of colors. I always like to add some indigo blue or some purple to it so that it's got some dimension to it rather than just black. Black is a whole. Black is an absence of color, therefore an absence of light. And so in order to avoid that, I kind of like to add other colors to it. Even though your eye looks at it and says it's black, it doesn't feel black. Hopefully that makes sense. It will, I think, as soon as we're done here. Especially when we delve more into color and color theory. So anything that feels dark, that feels black to you, think of it like ink. Just throw it in. When in doubt, leave it out. There's some little areas even on his beak. Even though his beak is dark, there are some lighter areas, like right up here at the top. You may want to just leave some of that out. Remember, break your lines, make it interesting by how your edges are put in there. You can already see that graphite kind of mixing around in that purple, and it's just not a pretty color. When in doubt, leave it out. If you look at it and think, well, I don't see anything there, just don't put it in. If you think to yourself, well, I know that there's a little bit of that top edge and I want to throw a little bit of that in there. If you got rid of your graphite, which I'm going to do right here, I'm just going to go through it, get rid of my graphite. You'll notice that the graphite goes, but most of the color stays there. Yes, some of it does come off on your kneaded eraser. That is true. But a lot of it just stays there. And now my graphite being gone, there's still that top edge there that I think, So if you wanted to, just throw in that little top edge with just a couple little dots and dashes. Kind of like that. Just ever so lightly. We can change this if we needed to. Because we're going to add a lot more color to this. I can even lighten up on my pencil a little bit and do a little shading down in there. Right under the eyes, a little bit of bluish purple down in there. So if I add this purple, I can add a little bit of blue later on. So you can do a little shading with your colored pencils as well. So hopefully you can kind of see where I'm going with this. It almost looks like ink, but with a blue pencil. Some of those little shadows that are under there, you could throw in some little dashed lines just to help you see where they are. They are darker, so we can layer color on top of that. So any place that I can see some darkness in there, just a little bit, think of it like ink, just little dots and dashes. And the cool thing is it's not going to be black. You can add pressure, or you can lighten up a little bit. And when you're ready, get rid of that graphite. So by the time we're all done, there's going to be no graphite on here at all. In my opinion, this is faster than ink. And that, like that curve around the wing there, it's gone. I can see where it's at. I can, this little line there, this little edge, and this little edge up here tell me where that curve is. But it's gone. The more, we'll add color to it. We'll get that edge later. But like I say, don't get too concerned if you don't have a line around things. It'll come. Just throw in shapes of darkness with that purple pencil. Little bit of darkness. There's a couple feathers that are kind of open. I'll show you where the darkness is on the wing there. Other than that, that's all you need. Now, if truly I were doing ink, there's more that I would put into it. But all I need is just the shape of it, just the gist of it. I'm going to throw in those little feet too at the bottom. Kind of like if it were ink, I'd throw in just a few little edges. Claw. So if you have a little imagination, you can say, oh yeah, I see where the feet are. And even that tree branch, if you wanted to throw in some little bit of texture with the tree branch, don't spend a lot of time on the tree branch. Nobody cares about the tree branch. But you could do that if you wanted to. You kind of think of it like ink. Now, hopefully by now, you're able to get rid of all your graphite. Our proportion should be fairly close. And there's a couple modes of thought that we can do here. We can start out with, we can put some black in it now and then put more purple and blue over the top of it. Or we can just start adding the colors and then use the black towards the end. Still want to add color to it. Remember that the last color you layer on is the color the light hits and reflects back onto your eye, and so it becomes the dominant color. But we still need some values. We still need it to go darker. So that's what that black is going to do for us. Well, let's go ahead and start adding color to it. And we'll just start top to bottom. I see some of this green, kind of a lime green. Maybe I'll add a little bit of that in there. What's this called? Yellow green? That's a good one. Start out with this yellow green. It is very yellow up there at the top. I might want to add some yellow just to begin with, and then do some green over the top of it. So if I add a little bit of yellow up in there, just a little bit. Now, one thing you're going to learn is yellow and purple are complementary colors. The purple looks good next to the yellow, but when you mix them, they cancel each other out. So the yellow on top of the purple will turn it kind of gray. And nothing wrong with that. And maybe while I've got this yellow, I'm going to just do some of that yellow in there. This is that lemony yellow. It's just yellow. There's a golden yellow that I really like that we'll probably use some in there. A little orange, a little red in there, but his whole body, all that area that's kind of orangey yellow. I'll throw some of this in there. Probably more towards the top. This bottom part looks more reddish orange, so maybe I'll not put any in there. But wherever it's really light, maybe I'll throw some of that in there. I might even throw just a little bit of yellow around the tips of his wings, like right in this area here. Because if you look at it, that's green, and yellow and blue make green. So if I put yellow in there and then a little bit of blue on top of that, that green will come through without me having to really do a lot of coloring with it. And this is fairly random. I'm not really paying too much attention to where I'm putting this yellow. And we'll probably use that yellow again in little places. Right now I'm just going to do the green. So I'm going to come up in here and do this green. I can go over the top of the purple with this green too. So don't be afraid if that green kind of touches some of that purple. That's okay. Into the yellow, it'll turn that yellowy green. By itself, it'll go more green. And then we'll do some blue in there. We'll get that blue-green. And again, over that purple, it's going to look just fine. There's a little bit of yellow in the green, so it's going to mix with our purple and kind of darken it, make it go kind of gray, if you will. This back edge is kind of blue, so maybe I'll leave a little bit of that edge up there so I can just do a bit of blue up in there. You can use pressure too to get it lighter or darker, more or less color into it. His eye is kind of a very light kind of blue-green, so I'm just going to throw just a little bit of green in there, just right here on the side, just a little bit. Don't go into the highlight though. Remember that highlight's got to stay white. So just add a little bit of green in there. Don't need a lot. Just going to refine this. There's a little bit of green where the dark, this kind of blackish fur is. It kind of comes out. Little tiny bit there. So I'm going to just throw a little bit of green there. And maybe a little bit into his beak. Just a little bit. Like right in there. That's probably about it for the green. Now we need some blue, and the blue on his head and the blue on his wings are fairly close to the same. When you're thinking about which blue to use, I like this one. I think it's called Sky Blue. That's one of my favorites, but you're welcome to use any others that you look at and you think, well, I really like that better. I like the Sky Blue. It's kind of a real pretty blue, and I think it's closer to his wings. So I'm going to throw that in there. Overlap a little bit of that yellow. Between those two, it'll turn kind of green anyway, and maybe a little green-blue. You can go over some of that green with the blue. It'll go blue-green. And then fade into the blue. Like I say, don't be afraid to overlap some of those colors. It's kind of a planned transition that we're doing here. We know what's going to happen if we mix blue and yellow. We know what's going to happen if we mix blue and green. I'm also going to add just a tiny bit of blue to his eye. Just a little bit on this end. When we hit this with some of that dark, either indigo blue or maybe a little bit of black and then blue, it's going to pop. It's just going to really look good. Same thing with his beak. I could add a little bit of blue, some of this gray area that we think of as gray over his beak. Feels a little more blue to me. Just going to add this blue over here. Down his beak. Any of those areas that you think they're not white, they're kind of gray, you can add some of this blue to it. And you can go right over the purple. You can go over some of that green that we put in there. All those colors are going to now be mixing, and we're layering in colors. So that shadow that's under his eye too is very kind of blue. Anytime you have white anything, the shadows are often going to be blue. And so I'm going to just go ahead and put a little bit of blue up in those shadowy areas. Around his little nostril. There's a little nostril there. Underneath his eye here, some blue. And you don't have to color hard. You can just do a little bit. Go over the top of the purple. Don't worry about that purple. It's got to go darker anyway. Little blue underneath there. Any place that you see a little shadow. Maybe some of those little wrinkles too could have a little bit of blue in them. Like right here down on the side, there's all these little wrinkles. And you just kind of scribble in some of those little wrinkles with that blue. It probably needs to go a little darker, but that's okay. It's a good start. Again, when we get that, we're going to do black and then purple over the top of that in his beak. So if you wanted to, you could do a little more blue up in there. It's up to you. But there's lots of other colors we're going to layer into this. That blue is a good start, especially for those shadows. Let's see, where else? His wings, they need that blue in there. You can almost just hatch right through it. And if it touches a little bit of that yellow, that's okay, because that'll make it go a little green. So you get a little bit of green up in there. That's okay. This wing is really bright over at the right side there. So I'm not coloring real heavy. So you start out kind of light, and as you layer things into it, you're going to have more pressure and more pressure, and finally, there towards the end, we're giving it some real good pressure. We're making that really pop. Right now, just fairly light. Also, people ask me, how do you make your stuff smooth? This is how you do it. You layer in your colors. And we might as well, while we're at it, might as well get some of that orange in there. There's a red orange, or there's just an orange. It's up to you. I'm just going to start out. There's even a yellow orange. I might start out with that yellow orange, because I can always go darker. Can always add more, you know. So I'm going to start out with some of that orange in there. Yellow orange. And now I'm going to try to do a little bit of texture. It almost looks like hair. Those little feathers, little puffy feathers. So I'm going to go in the direction that I feel like it flows and add some of that yellowy orange to it. Now, orange and blue are complementary colors. So if you get some of that orange over the blue, it's going to turn kind of gray. That's okay, because that edge is pretty dark anyway. So you don't have to worry about that at all. Even that little bit of purple that we layered in there, if you go over that with the orange, it's going to be okay. It'll cancel it out, won't look as purple, but that's just fine, because it's a little bit of a shadow. Now, if you stay around art long enough and you paint, you start painting, painting does the same thing. You have to understand colors and how they mix and what's going to happen if you layer them into it. So this is a good preparation for learning to paint. As long as you understand color, you're going to be fine. Whereas his little belly is really very orangey, I'm just going to go over the whole thing. Like I said, I can always come back into it with more color, add some more later. You can also kind of crosshatch with your colors. Sometimes I'll go one way and then I'll turn my wrist and go another way so that I kind of get a more even distribution of color. So now we want this to pop. We need the contrast. We need the darks. So I'm gonna take the black now. I'm gonna take that black. This is probably about the only time we'll use the black. I kind of try to avoid black wherever I can. But we need that contrast. We need it to really pop. So where do you start? I'm going to start with the eye and work my way out, just like we did before. I'm going to go into that pupil. I'm going to add a little bit of pressure to it. See how that eye just all of a sudden pops? Anything that is, in my mind, is very dark, I'm going to use that black into it. The edge of the eye. And you can add some pressure to it. It's really black. Go ahead and add some pressure. We will come into that a little bit later with some purple or blue. Or maybe we just leave it black. I don't know. And see how that eye just pops and looks so nice? That's what your contrast is going to do for you. Now, I'm going to go back into that blue just like I do with the blue, kind of dots and dashes, but I'm adding some pressure to it. Some of that dark that's over the top. Adding some pressure and just wanting to get some of that dark that's in there. That contrast is just going to make it nice, just going to help you. Use that feathered line that I taught you. Anytime you go into like the tips of his feathers, just that little flick, 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 flick. Cool thing is I've already got that blue. Those are my guidelines. I don't really have to guess where things are going to go anymore. If I needed to change them, like if I look back on it and go, oh, that's not in the right place or whatever, I can change it while it's still blue. Once you start layering that black, it's hard to change it. Little parrot's now, just look at him pop. He's starting to jump off the page. That's kind of fun. There's that feathered edge. It's just a little flip, 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 so that you get that nice soft edge there in the feathers. I want that texture to come through, so I'm going to do these little zigzaggy kind of textures like this. I'll go back over this with some purple, so it'll go dark, but it'll still look kind of like the dark of the feathers. So they're just like these little C shapes or these little upside down U shapes. Not much black anywhere but in his head right here. There might be a little tiny bit in some of these wing areas that are really dark, but for the most part, once you're done with the head, that's about it. Since you've already got that blue under there, you can leave some areas out and that blue will come through. You can always go darker too if you think, yeah, later on. Little areas that are kind of hard to see. I don't exactly know if this is his tongue or what that is right there, because I think his mouth is slightly open, but it doesn't really matter. You just do your darks and lights, whatever that is. just a couple little spots of darkness by his wings, and I think that's about it. Further you get away from his head, the more sketchy you can be too. And it seems like it goes quicker. Now, because I don't like all that black in there, I'm going to go over it with purple. And the cool thing is all this purple I can just hit fairly dark. It'll mix with the black under there. You'll still get that texture, but it won't be black. It darkens it in, blends it out, smooths it out. This is just purple, and I'm layering in some pretty good pressure with it. I can also go back into some of these shadowy areas. If you've got some little wrinkles in there, do that with the purple. Over the top of that blue, it's going to be just nice. All those colors are mixing now. The values are there, dark darks. Those that you think, well, they kind of look gray, they're blues and purples. Any place that I think needs to go a little darker, this is the time to do it. That dark that's up in the green, I'm going to do in that with purple. If it goes over the blue, that's good too. That purple's going to mix with just about anything. I always get asked what my favorite color is, and I think it's purple, just because you can do so much with it. I think we need that orange to pop a little bit more. Maybe some more red orange, but you can from here on out, just go ahead and add whatever color you think you need, because the important parts are done. That head is done. Everything else we can add more color to it. Ooh. That's how much I'm putting pressure on it, I guess. All those colors mixing. This is red orange. If it goes over that yellow, it'll just turn more orange. If it hits some of that green, it's going to go kind of brown. I'm really putting pressure on it now. This is that golden yellow. and it's going to go a lot brighter. I'm going to put a little yellow in his eye just to warm it up a little bit. On top of that blue and that green, it's going to look just fine. Just warms it up a little bit, makes it a little more alive. Now you just kind of add color like crazy. You just go crazy with it. Because the detail part is done. It is done. Hopefully you can see the advantages that we had by learning ink first, how we draw with that, and then how our parrot turns out without any edges, any lines around it. And yet he's there. He just is taking care of himself. This blue might be a good one to put in there and just get some of those little darker areas in the feathers. And you just keep layering in color until you're happy with it. This is blue, so I've gone over the purple, over the black. The blue is going to make it a little cooler, a little grayer, if you will. So you're welcome to finish this. So it's good practice. Had a student ask me the other day, how do I get better? Practice. Just practice. That's what happens. Good place for a signature. It's about right down there. Thanks for being here today. Thanks for being so good and willing to take this little journey. Hope you have a lovely day, and hopefully your life's a little bit better because you did art. Because art makes life better.